Remember Saturday mornings in the early 70s? Bowl of cereal, pajamas still on, and the sound of that little orange dune buggy revving up across your television screen. Speed Buggy was more than just another cartoon. It was part of our weekly ritual, part of growing up. That talking car with the big personality captured something special. Today, we're taking a trip down memory lane to uncover some surprising stories about this classic show. Here are 10 wild facts you didn't know about Speed Buggy from 1973. Number 10. Disney's Herbie was the spark. Speed Buggy didn't just appear out of thin air. The show was directly inspired by Disney's 1968 film, The Love Bug, which introduced the world to Herbie, that mischievous white Volkswagen Beetle with a mind of its own. When The Love Bug became a massive hit at the box office, pulling in over $51 million, Hollywood took notice. That kind of success made studios realize that audiences loved the idea of cars with personalities. Children wanted to believe their family car might have thoughts and feelings, and parents enjoyed the wholesome family entertainment. Hanna-Barbera saw the potential in bringing that same concept to Saturday morning television. They took the idea of a sentient car and transformed it into Speed Buggy, an orange talking dune buggy who solved mysteries with his teenage friends. The choice to make Speed Buggy a dune buggy instead of a regular car was brilliant. Dune buggies represented freedom and adventure in the early 70s. They were the vehicles you saw racing across beaches and deserts in California, the ultimate symbol of youth culture and outdoor fun. The connection between Herbie and Speed Buggy runs even deeper than you might think. Speed Buggy's personality, with those expressive headlight eyes and that animated front grille serving as a mouth, echoed Herbie's charm. Both cars had heart, both had sass, and both won races despite their small size. They were underdogs who triumphed through determination and the help of their human friends. The parallel was so obvious that nobody tried to hide it. Hanna-Barbera was adapting a proven formula for a different medium and audience. The studio even acknowledged another inspiration from their own vault. Some historians suggest that Chugaboom, the talking car from The Perils of Penelope Pitstop, served as a kind of prototype. Producer Iwao Takamoto had learned from his previous successes with Scooby-Doo and Josie and the Pussycats, and he applied those lessons when developing Speed Buggy. The formula of lovable characters mixed with adventure and mystery had proven itself time and time again. Takamoto knew what worked, and he wasn't afraid to refine and repeat successful elements. Number 9. The voice of 1,000 characters. When you heard Speed Buggy talk, you were listening to one of the most legendary voice actors in animation history. Mel Blanc, known as the Man of 1,000 Voices, brought the little dune buggy to life. By 1973, Blanc had already created Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, and dozens of other iconic characters for Warner Bros. His career stretched back to the 1930s, and he'd become a household name even though most people had never seen his face. He was the invisible star behind so many beloved characters. After his exclusive contract with Warner Bros. Ended in 1960, Blanc expanded his work to include Hanna-Barbera television productions. He voiced Barney Rubble on The Flintstones, bringing warmth and humor to Fred's best friend. He created the pompous, blustering personality of Mr. Spacely on The Jetsons. Later, he would voice Captain Caveman and Secret Squirrel, adding even more characters to his impressive roster. Each role showcased different aspects of Blanc's remarkable talent. What made Blanc's portrayal of Speed Buggy special was how he adapted his talent to fit the character. Speed Buggy's voice carried hints of other Blanc creations, but remained distinct. The sputtering engine sounds, the enthusiastic personality, and those signature catchphrases became instantly recognizable. Blanc actually used a similar voice technique to one he'd employed earlier for a vehicle called Chugaboom. The beauty of Blanc's work was that each character felt completely original, even when drawing from his vast repertoire of sounds and vocal tricks. Speed Buggy's catchphrases became part of the show's charm. Kids across America would shout out, "Roger Dodger," and "Vroom-a-zoom-zoom," while playing in their backyards. Blanc understood how to make a car sound excited, nervous, brave, or scared, using nothing but his voice and some well-timed sound effects. He could convey Speed Buggy's mechanical nature while still making the character feel warm and alive. That was the genius of Mel Blanc. He found the humanity in everything he voiced, even when playing a dune buggy. At this point in his career, Blanc was in his mid-60s, yet his energy and creativity remained as fresh as ever. He approached Speed Buggy with the same professionalism and dedication he brought to Bugs Bunny. Every recording session mattered. Every line deserved his full attention. This work ethic helped establish the high standards that would define television animation for decades to come. Number 8. Only 16 episodes changed television history. Here's something that surprises people. Speed Buggy only produced 16 episodes during its original run from September to December 1973. That's right, just 16 half-hour episodes. The show aired on CBS for a single season, running from September 8th through December 22nd. And then, it was done with original production. In today's world of streaming services and endless seasons, this seems impossibly brief. Yet somehow, this brief run managed to make an enormous impact on television history. The production schedule for Saturday morning cartoons in the early 70s was intense. Studios churned out episodes quickly, working on multiple shows simultaneously. 16 episodes was actually a reasonable order for a new series. Networks wanted to see how audiences responded before committing to more production. CBS gave Speed Buggy a fair shot, placing it in a prime Saturday morning slot alongside other popular cartoons. How did 16 episodes become so influential? The answer lies in syndication and the power of repetition. After the original run ended, something remarkable happened. Speed Buggy became one of the few shows to air on all 3 major television networks. It started on CBS, where it continued running in reruns until 1975. Kids who missed the original broadcasts got multiple chances to discover the show. Then ABC picked it up for their Saturday morning lineup in 1975 and 1976, introducing Speed Buggy to viewers who might not have watched CBS. Finally, NBC brought the show to their schedule from November 1976 until September 1977, replacing a canceled show called McDuff, the Talking Dog. Speed Buggy had completed the cycle, appearing on every major network of the era. This kind of network rotation was unusual, but not unheard of. Networks constantly shuffled their Saturday morning schedules, trying to find the right mix of shows to capture young viewers. Speed Buggy proved to be reliable programming that consistently attracted audiences. Children didn't seem to mind watching the same episodes multiple times. In fact, the repetition created comfort and familiarity. The show continued finding audiences throughout the late 70s and into the 80s. USA Network picked it up for their Cartoon Express programming block, where it ran from 1982 to around 1990. Later, Cartoon Network and Boomerang brought Speed Buggy to new generations of viewers. Those 16 episodes were rerun so many times that entire generations grew up with the show. It became a fixture of childhood, a dependable friend that showed up every Saturday morning. Networks loved Speed Buggy because it was reliable programming that kids enjoyed, and it often replaced quickly canceled new shows that couldn't find an audience. Number 7. The Goomer Pyle Connection. Tinker, Speed Buggy's mechanic and best friend, had a very distinctive voice. If he sounded familiar, there was a good reason. Phil Luther Jr., who voiced Tinker, was deliberately imitating Jim Nabors' famous character Goomer Pyle from The Andy Griffith Show and its spin-off series. That southern drawl, the innocent enthusiasm, and especially Tinker's signature expression, "Golly," all came straight from Goomer Pyle's playbook. The character design reinforced this connection. Tinker wore a racing jumpsuit and goggles, but his personality was pure small-town mechanic with a heart of gold. He was the one who built Speed Buggy, and their friendship formed the emotional core of the show. Tinker wasn't the smartest member of the team. That role belonged to Mark. But he had street smarts and mechanical genius that saved the day more than once. Interestingly, Phil Luther Jr. didn't have much of a voice acting career beyond Speed Buggy. This appears to have been his only major role in animation. When Speed Buggy and Tinker appeared years later in Laugh Olympics, a different actor, Frank Welker, took over the role. But for those original 16 episodes, Luther's Gomer Pyle-inspired performance defined the character. Kids watching in 1973 might not have caught the reference, but their parents certainly recognized that familiar cadence and those homespun expressions. Number 6. Debbie was actually the leader. In an era when most cartoon groups featured male leaders, Speed Buggy broke the mold. Debbie, voiced by Arlene Galanka, was the actual leader of the Speed Bugs team. This was Galanka's first voice acting role, and she brought intelligence and authority to the character. While Fred was the leader of the Scooby-Doo gang, Debbie ran the show for Speed Buggy's crew. The dynamic was even lampshaded in one episode. In The Hidden Valley of Amazonia, when the team encounters a society where women rule, Mark and Tinker try to explain to their captors that Debbie already tells them what to do most of the time. They joke that they're lucky to get a word in edgewise. This wasn't a throwaway line. Throughout the series, Debbie made the plans, Debbie gave the orders, and Debbie kept Mark and Tinker focused on solving mysteries instead of getting distracted. Mark was positioned as the brainy one, similar to Fred from Scooby-Doo, but he often deferred to Debbie's judgment. The show never made a big deal about having a female leader. It was simply accepted as the natural order of things within this particular group. For young girls watching in 1973, seeing Debbie take charge provided a different kind of role model than they usually found in Saturday morning cartoons. Number 5. The Scooby-Doo connection was everywhere. Speed Buggy wore its Scooby-Doo influences proudly. In fact, the show was one of several Hanna-Barbera programs that followed the Scooby-Doo formula during the early 70s. The similarities were obvious and intentional. Tinker looked remarkably like Shaggy, complete with the messy hair and lanky build. Mark resembled Fred with his clean-cut appearance and ascot. Debbie had Daphne's style and grace. Even the storylines followed a familiar pattern. The gang would enter a race, encounter a mystery involving villains or supernatural elements, and solve the case while still competing. Hanna-Barbera literally reused animation cells from Scooby-Doo. When the characters ran or walked, they sometimes used the exact same animation cycles from the Scooby Gang. Tinker's run was Shaggy's run, Debbie's walk was Daphne's walk, and Mark's movements came from Fred. This wasn't lazy animation. It was smart business. By reusing proven animation, the studio could produce more shows and keep costs manageable. The connection became official when Speed Buggy and the Scooby-Doo gang met in a crossover episode. The Weird Winds of Winona aired on the new Scooby-Doo movies on October 13, 1973, just a month after Speed Buggy's premiere. The two teams worked together to solve a mystery involving strange winds and a haunted town. This crossover episode is notable for another reason. It was the only time Mark, who was intended to be Native American, was actually drawn with darker skin to reflect his heritage. In the regular Speed Buggy series, this aspect of his character wasn't visually apparent. Number 4, from screen to game board. Speed Buggy's popularity extended beyond television in 1973. That same year, Milton Bradley released a board game based on the show. The game captured the racing spirit of the cartoon, with players racing their buggies through a fictionalized version of Baja California. It was a simple roll-and-move game appropriate for kids, but it featured some strategic elements that elevated it above basic children's fare. The board game became a sought-after item, and today vintage copies in good condition are collector's items. The box art featured vibrant colors showing Speed Buggy and the gang in action, capturing that early 70s aesthetic perfectly. For families in 1973, this was a way to bring Saturday morning fun to their kitchen tables. 2 years later, Charlton Comics jumped on board with a comic book series. Starting in 1975, Charlton published 9 issues of Speed Buggy comics that ran through 1976. The comics expanded on the television show's universe, creating new adventures for Speed Buggy, Tinker, Mark, and Debbie. The The stories followed the familiar formula. The team would enter a race and stumble into a mystery involving bank robbers, mad scientists, spies, or other colorful villains. Writers like Michael Pawlowski, Jim Hanley, Bill Williams, and Joe Gill brought their own touches to the Speed Buggy world while maintaining the spirit of the cartoon. The comics gave Speed Buggy a longer shelf life, introducing the characters to readers who might have missed the original television run. Even though the show only produced 16 episodes, the comic book series created dozens of new stories and adventures. Number 3. The show recycled stories from other series. Here's a behind-the-scenes secret that many fans never knew. Several Speed Buggy episodes were actually reworked versions of storylines from another Hanna-Barbera series, Josie and the Pussycats. The writers would take a plot from Josie, swap out the rock band for a racing team, replace the musical elements with racing sequences, and create a new Speed Buggy adventure. This practice wasn't unusual for Hanna-Barbera during the 70s. The studio was producing multiple shows simultaneously, and deadlines were tight. If a story worked for one group of characters, it could be adapted for another with some creative adjustments. The beauty of the formula was its flexibility. Mystery-solving teenagers could be musicians, athletes, or racers. The core appeal remained the same: adventure, friendship, and outsmarting the bad guys. Critics have noted these similarities over the years. Some saw it as creative recycling, while others viewed it as evidence of Hanna-Barbera's assembly line approach to Saturday morning programming. Either way, it worked. Kids tuned in week after week, and Speed Buggy built a loyal following despite using familiar story structures. Number 2, Speed Buggy inspired a live-action imitator. The success of Speed Buggy caught the attention of other producers. In 1976, Sid and Marty Krofft created Wonderbug as part of their variety show, The Krofft Super Show. Wonderbug featured 3 teenagers and a talking dune buggy in live-action format. Sound familiar? The similarities were so obvious that Wonderbug was essentially a live-action version of Speed Buggy. Both shows featured a dune buggy with a personality. Both had teenage protagonists who solved mysteries, and both emphasized the friendship between the car and its human companions. Wonderbug even included the same kind of expressive headlight eyes and anthropomorphic features that made Speed Buggy so appealing. The difference was that Wonderbug used practical effects and costumes to bring the car to life instead of animation. The connection didn't stop there. Both Speed Buggy and Wonderbug drew inspiration from Disney's The Love Bug. It created a kind of creative lineage. Herbie inspired Speed Buggy, and Speed Buggy inspired Wonderbug. The talking car concept proved durable enough to work across different formats and audiences. Hanna-Barbera themselves continued exploring the concept. They created other shows featuring anthropomorphic vehicles, including Wheelie and the Chopper Bunch and Wonder Wheels. Author David Perlmutter later grouped these shows together as a trilogy of humanized automobile cartoons. By the mid-70s, talking cars had become a recognizable subgenre of children's programming. Number 1, a comeback that lasted decades. Speed Buggy never really went away. After the original series ended, the characters kept appearing in new productions. In 1977, Speed Buggy and Tinker joined the cast of Scooby's All-Star Laugh-Olympics, competing as members of the Scooby-Doobies team alongside other Hanna-Barbera favorites. This crossover series brought together characters from dozens of different shows for Olympic-style competitions. The cameos continued through the decades. Speed Buggy appeared in a Johnny Bravo episode as a punchline. The show popped up in Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, where Speed Buggy faced legal troubles for fleeing police during a high-speed chase. In that Adult Swim series, the characters were deliberately portrayed out of character for comedic effect. Mark and Debbie spent the entire episode making out instead of solving mysteries. More recently, Speed Buggy has found new life in the 2000s and 2000s. The character appeared in Scooby-Doo, Mystery Incorporated, Scooby-Doo, and Guess Who, and even got a DC Comics reboot in 2018 with the Flash Speed Buggy special. In 2020, Speed Buggy showed up in the rebooted Animaniacs series. The character has also made appearances in South Park, Futurama, My Life as a Teenage Robot, and Invader Zim. In 2021, Speed Buggy and Tinker became regular characters on Jellystone, an HBO Max series that reimagines classic Hanna-Barbera characters in new settings. Tinker is now voiced by Dana Snyder, bringing a different energy to the role while honoring the original character. Warner Archive released a complete DVD set of all 16 episodes, allowing new generations to discover the show. Episodes occasionally air on Boomerang, keeping Speed Buggy in rotation alongside other classic cartoons. For a show that only produced 16 episodes in 1973, Speed Buggy has demonstrated remarkable staying power, appearing in new productions more than 50 years after its debut. Speed Buggy captured something special during those Saturday mornings in 1973. That orange dune buggy with the big personality, along with Tinker, Mark, and Debbie, took us on adventures around the world. They raced against colorful villains, solved mysteries in exotic locations, and always made it to the finish line. Week after week, we knew we could count on Speed Buggy to deliver excitement and laughs. The show might have only lasted 16 episodes, but its impact stretched across decades. Those episodes were crafted with care by talented writers, animators, and voice actors who understood what made Saturday morning cartoons special. They created characters we cared about and stories that sparked our imaginations. From inspiring other shows to appearing in crossovers and revivals, Speed Buggy earned its place in animation history. The little dune buggy that could become an icon of 70s television. If these facts brought back some memories, or if you learned something new about this classic cartoon, go ahead and hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe for more trips down memory lane with the shows and songs that shaped our generation. Until next time, keep those engines running and those memories alive.